Ross, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to see you. This seems to be now a little bit of a narrative that they're constructing over at Labour HQ, doesn't it? Because Wes Streeting the other day came out with something similar, saying that, we're struggling to fix the economy because of Brexit. I mean, people voted to leave the European Union nearly 10 years ago.
Yes, exactly. I mean, Wes Streeting seems to be a bit the advance guard on this. The word is that Rachel Reeves will, during her budget speech, start trying to blame Nigel Farage and Brexit for having to put up our taxes. As you know, Nigel Farage is really the Chancellor. Rachel Reeves is just a front, and completely ridiculous. The idea that Brexit has harmed the economy. To believe that, you've really got to be incredibly blinkered and not sort of be in touch with what's happening the other side of the channel.
Right.
If Brexit had harmed our economy, I mean, Britain would be sort of going down the tube while the rest of the EU sort of sailed ahead without us. Whereas, you look at economic growth since we voted to leave the EU, we're about the same as France. Not great economic growth. We've been sort of a bit pedestrian, our economy, but we've grown about the same level as France has. We've grown faster than Germany has. Germany is in the middle of a sort of rather sharp industrial decline. So neither of those countries, I think, have left the EU. So why should you blame Britain's sort of lousy economic performance on Brexit?
Right. Well, it's a very strange situation that we find ourselves in, isn't it? Let me play you this from Rachel Reeves, which she said this morning, because on the one hand, they're saying, Brexit's to blame for the economy being a terrible place. And then here she talks about, possibly being in a doom loop. And then in other public pronouncements, they're trying to make out that everything's fine. Have a look at this.
Our tax rises coming down the track.
Yeah, but I think that this government are making... in terms of the ambition of this government, it is big.
But you agreed, yes, there are tax rises coming down the track.
I was really clear during the general election campaign, and we discussed this many times, that I would always make sure that the numbers add up.
Can you promise the British people you're not going to get stuck in a doom loop of having to go through this cycle every year of having to find more tax to fill the black hole?
Nobody wants that cycle to end more than I do, Sam. That's why that is why we're putting all the effort into growing our economy, because that in the end is what brings in the tax revenues to be able to afford to keep taxes low.
So she finishes up with having admitted that we are in some kind of doom loop, and she is going to raise taxes, by at the end saying, I'm going to create growth. Well, sorry, I mean, all of those same things can't be true.
No, and, on another day, she would be boasting, Britain's got the highest growth rate in the G7. Well, if Brexit's to blame for the economy, well, how come we've got the highest growth rate in the G7? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And Keir Starmer, if you remember his conference speech a couple of weeks ago,
I'd rather not.
Boasting of, probably not, but he was boasting of how the government had done a trade deal with India and it managed to get a sort of reasonably good deal with Trump and his tariffs. And, of course, he didn't mention the one thing that should actually made these things possible, which is Brexit. If we were still in the EU, we'd be, we'd be thumped by the tariffs Trump imposed on the EU. We wouldn't have been able to do a trade deal with India, which the negotiations for which were begun by the previous Conservative government, by the way. And yet, and another day they're saying Brexit is to blame for everything, and it just doesn't sort of make sense, does it?
None of it makes sense. No, that was shortly before he sort of encouraged everybody to rise up and fight Nigel Farage, because he was the biggest threat to Britain since the Normans or something. He's been very carried away these days, and I mean, I've worked out, I don't know whether you heard any of the show earlier, what's wrong with him, and I don't know whether you ever heard of this particular condition, but mythomania is something I'm thinking about writing about. We think that Keir Starmer may be suffering from it. It's a psychological condition characterised by a compulsive and habitual tendency to lie, often with no clear benefit or motive.
Yeah, so he's not the only politician to suffer from that, let's say.
No, it could be an epidemic. Maybe we should try and find a vaccine for it.
Yes, yeah, but wind back to the sort of day after the general election, and Keir Starmer was boasting, growth, growth, growth was going to be the absolute priority of his government. And, where are we? We were sort of, we've sort of been bumping along the bottom of the growth has actually sort of, declined. We had a sort of really rather promising situation when the last government left office. Growth had sort of perked up a bit. Employment was growing strongly. And now in the year since, the past year, we've lost 115,000 payrolled positions.
Yeah. I think it's 123 now, actually.
Yes, and I mean, there is a very good reason for that. Is that the national insurance hike, employers' national insurance hike last budget increased the costs for employers, particularly for those employing part-time staff, because she reduced that threshold for paying national insurance from £9,100 to £5,000, which brought a lot more part-time workers into the net. Employers, supermarkets and so on, warned her that this would cause jobs to be shed, and that's exactly what has happened in practice.
It absolutely has. Great column anyway, Ross. Listen, thank you very much indeed. Ross Clark, columnist at The Sun, on page 10 today. Brexit to blame for our sluggish economy, he asks. Isn't it more the fault of your policies, he says to Rachel Reeves, because G7 growth in 2025 has got the US at 2%, UK at 1.3%, France at 0.7%, Italy at 0.5%, Germany at 0.2%. So France, Italy and Germany have got a more sluggish economy than we have. Ours is pretty bad, but theirs is even worse. So if it wasn't for Brexit, ours would be even worse. Let's have a look at what is being said on the Sun Letters page.
Letters from the Sun, the page where you tell Britain what to think. For more, visit thesun.co.uk.
And an awful lot of it, of course, to do with Donald Trump and the Middle East. This one from Francis in Wigan, who says, love him or loathe him, you can't deny that Donald Trump gets things done. Thanks to the US president, it was great to see all the Israeli hostages held by Hamas finally freed and hugging their loved one. Watch out, Putin. You are next in Trump's eye line. Seeing Trump in action makes me lean towards voting for Nigel Farage in our country, because I think the two men are cut from a similar cloth. Anne in Sheffield says, Donald Trump is a hero. Who else could have brokered a deal to get the release of the hostages back to Israel? Certainly not our flimsy Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and all the other wittering heads of state. Trump gets things done, and let's hope peace can be found throughout the Middle East. And one final one from Alex in Tyne Weir. It says, whatever his critics say, Donald Trump gets results. Hence the emotional release of the 20 surviving Israeli hostages. Starmer, in comparison, was his usual feeble self, adding nothing to Trump's ambitious mission to bring peace. Yet there he was, bold as brass, at the Gaza summit in Egypt. If he had even a little of Trump's political nous, Britain would not be in the mess that it is. I think that's a very true statement. Very well said. Thank you very much indeed. Gurdeep says this. Good morning, Mike. Labour keeps running this country on a foundation of lies and gaslighting. It's unbelievable how far they'll go to twist reality while people are struggling more every day. Something has to give. This government has lost all credibility after that humiliating appearance at the summit, were an embarrassment on the world stage. Yet they still carry on as if nothing's wrong. Enough is enough. They need to go.